Well, good morning or good afternoon, as it may be, wherever you are. I welcome you to our complimentary webinar, Nail Your Next NCQA Accreditation Hire. This is one that was something that I've learned in the last 10 years in trial and error. I'm the president and CEO of Managed Healthcare Resources that I started as an NCQA accreditation firm 34 years ago. I jokingly say I don't hire anybody that was born after I started the company because they just don't have enough experience behind them. And so I was an NCQA Surveyor for 29 years until January when I retired from doing that to just work on the firm. We had a lot of NCQA surveyors on the team, and we're branching out URAC accreditation and have some URAC surveyors on that I am working with. So want to always make sure we have that connection back to that experience that they've had in their past, or at least for the most part. And so there are common pain points when everybody is trying to hire. There's unqualified or misaligned hires. And what you're going to gain today is checklists, insights, tools, red flags, and lessons. We have 4 handouts that are going to go out, and I'm going to be working on several of those during this. But I want this to be very practical for you because it is so important to have competency-based hiring and behavioral interviewing, or else you're going to hire on personality. And personality, you can be nice to work with, but if you cannot pull your weight, you are not going to be able to do the work. And so this is a lot of experience gained in the last 10 years that I started hiring people instead of being a solopreneur to replicate myself and to try to see what would work out. So it's been a lot of trial and error there. And I wanted you to have the experience that I've had with as few regrets as possible. When you do a lot of the upfront work and take your time, you're going to have fewer impact on bad hires and human fallout. And so the saying is you either succeed or you learn. And I've had a lot of learning in the last several years, and I want you to have the benefit of that. So anybody who knows me knows that I love quotes. We have 3 at all of our team meetings every month. And so, of course, I'm going to lead with that. Hiring the wrong people is the fastest way to undermine a sustainable business. And the famous Richard Branson from Virgin Airways says, hiring the right people takes time, asking the right questions, and a healthy dose of curiosity. And many people have told me, hire slow, fire fast. Because Perry Belcher says, nothing will kill a great employee faster than watching you tolerate a bad one. We know that once people get their foot in the door, they are probably going to stay for quite a while until either they're not meeting their performance measures for months on end, or you just get tired of the poor performance. So hiring the right person is important because bad hires, you're going to have missed deadlines, survey risk, reputation damage, effect on the team, and experienced hires ramp up faster to align with NCQA requirements. And I just want to put the emphasis on, there are a lot of firms that think, well, I'm just going to retool my QI person to do that in accreditation. And there's a chasm between people who do great QI work and work on HEDIS and closing gaps and clinical and non-clinical complaints and all of the things in the QI plan, and as opposed to accreditation specific responsibilities. So I want to, I'm not going to contrast and compare, but I do want you to be aware of that in case leadership wants to do that. So right now I am going to have a poll, and I would like you to answer that. I pulled the poll up. I hope that you can see that. I'm going to give you 30 seconds to respond to that. Be very decisive. How confident are you in your current accreditation hiring process? Not confident at all? No specific strategy, hit or miss, or I always hire the correct person? it's hit or miss. On that 60% said it's hit or miss, 30% no specific strategy, and woohoo, whoever said, I always hire the correct person. One person said that. Kudos to you. You probably have a lot of experience behind you and have asked the right things. So I looked up the estimated financial cost of a bad hire, and it's a lot. And I don't know if your line item for your budget has your personnel costs in the line, but if it does, just look at if you had somebody who was being paid $90,000 a year, and I bet you there's some on here that pay more than that. Conservatively, it would cost you $27,000 and probably more. That's just a very conservative cost. So where did the costs come from? The direct costs are wasted recruitment, onboarding, and training time, and salary and consulting expenses due to underperformers. We found a lot of times people bring us in because people can't pull all their weight, and then they have the consultants doing the regular work, which, that's can be part of our scope of work. It's a higher cost to the organization than if you had a real functioning person that could do that work in there. So I really, I know you'd like to get the right people, but this is one of the costs, and that is for consulting when somebody else is not doing it, or somebody leaves, or you're in between people, or you need more people. And so you just always, if you have the right staff, a lot of times they can carry the load of the work. There's opportunity costs with delayed readiness for submissions, have a lot of fire drills, missed deadlines because of causing that fire drill, and nobody likes that. Lost productivity from senior staff who have to step in and cover the gaps. And I know some people on this call who really had to do that. And then compliance and risk, where you miss standards, you get corrective action plans, you get a provisional status. All this adds to financial costs and time because NCQA has a 3-year process. And if you have a corrective action plan and a provisional status in there too, both of those will happen in between that 3-year time period. Any more cost to your budget, and a constant working on getting ready for a survey. And we really support getting being in sustained performance, but when you're having to keep getting ready and it's a lot of work and really wears on people's time and their efforts. And so if you can get away from that, everybody of course wants to, but those are some of the costs with when you have inadequate staff or inappropriate staff. Also, there's a reputational risk. There's weight on your team because of the morale is lower. Engagement suffers, trust erodes if poor performance is tolerated. As in one of the quotes, that's a good way to lose other people on the team. Reputational risk in your organization. You have problems and your leadership is not going to be very confident in your team, and they're going to start micromanaging people and scrutinizing things more deeply, just like a surveyor will on a survey. When they find something wrong or don't find that you're forthcoming, that's going to happen. And anybody can get into NCQA's report card and see what's going on with a corrective action plan or provisional or denial status. And future contracts with both employer groups and also with the state. And we've been involved in some of those when we were brought on after some of these bad situations happened with denials or provisionals or caps. And we're brought in to help mitigate that because they were going to lose the state Medicaid contract. So next slide. It's important and it's mission critical because it doesn't just cost you money. It could cost your reputation, your timeline, and your team's trust. We're going to cover areas today on what's the role you're hiring for, how do you align values and cultural fit, technical skills, behavioral interviewing, and DISC assessments. The first one I'm going to cover is value congruence. This is one of the most important things, and I lead with that. because if your values are misaligned with the person that you're hiring, you're not going to have any traction with that person, because they could be the most skilled technical person with accurate answers on the behavioral questions. But if they don't fit your values, run away. Values should attract people, and hopefully they also repel the wrong people that don't, they're not in sync with what you feel and you believe in your organization. And our values, we have 13 of them listed on our website, and we're just going through those in our team meetings about what that means internally to us and the team and externally to our clients. But we've had those up for 3 years, and I don't see that they need to change, because this is how we approach our work and how we work internally and working with each other as team and working with our clients. It's all based on value. And you can pick these up from things that they say and words that they use. So have several conversations with them. Talk about the values in your organization. One of the things I was just so pleased to hear from somebody who was a client who was given in her role another business unit. And one of the first things she did is have everybody meet together and say, this is how we ethically approach accreditation. We don't mislead the consultants or the surveyors. We always are honest. And she was going through all the ethical things that are important. And if you don't do that with the people that you're interviewing and see how they answer, you might end up with a dud. So listen carefully. I always listen to things that people say. I ask about their family. I ask about in the behavioral, in the situations, it could leak out what their values are and if they're a person of character or not, because I only want to hire people who have character to work with me, because we're a remote workforce. And a lot of the ones that we're talking to today are too. If you can't trust them when you can't see them, then there's no basis and foundation for who you're going to work for. So values are very important. And so talk about them. Make sure before you start, and I know probably everybody does this, but maybe in smaller organizations you don't, define the scope of their roles. Do you want them just in a pigeonhole that you want them to just do drone work all the time and not think, just very task oriented? Or do you want them to hire forward to see how they can grow, develop, and maybe you're going to just bring them in as a team member, but you want to help them to develop into a team leader in the future if you have a team. And so always look for those characteristics as you are interviewing them, you're working with them, you're seeing what roles they've been in before, but you need to make sure you go into the whole situation knowing exactly what your intent is and what you want to see from them. So of course, team leader needs to have the breadth of knowledge, plus have leadership skills, and also, and you can, in the behavioral interview, you can find some of these out. And then of course, a sole accreditation person has to do everything. And they certainly need to be able to teach, delegate, organize, and have wonderful time management. This is really critical because there is so much to do if you're the solo person. And we do have clients like that. Usually there's smaller health plans or single products that we're helping with. So I'm going to share with you some of the secret sauce that we have that I found that's worked. It's worked for us. A lot of trial and error. How do we do this? And I'm always tweaking it, but this is how it is. I have a video submission that every applicant has to have. I was sick and tired of getting 500 applicants who didn't have a lot of qualifications, even had some screening questions, and if they don't answer it a certain way, they get automatic replies, they don't qualify. And then I'd still get people, and then after I screen them, I'd say, I wish I'd known about certain things before. So I have a video submission, no more than 5 minutes. I ask them very specific questions. They are on our website. And this is important because I'm asking them, why do you want to work at MHR? I've had people that come on screening calls and have never even looked at our website. That's to me a terminal lack of curiosity. And if they're not going to do that, then, I don't think I'm interested in them. I know I'm not interested in dealing with them. So that forces them, if they really want to do the work. And if they talk about your values, your mission, your vision really resonated with me, that tells me right away that they qualify for a screening call. And then in the next calls and contacts, that I try to decipher if they're just giving me some lip service, but they're not for real. And then I have an evaluation of the video and their resume. So, some people say CEO as Chief Everything Officer. And yes, we're small enough that I review everybody before they come on, because I don't want to waste time in this whole process. It's like, going over the gauntlet with all the steps that we have to make sure we get the right hire. So yes, I screen them. I ask them some very specific questions, and I get at where their interests lie and if they're passionate about the standards. You don't want somebody who's not passionate about the standards, and then it becomes a job. It's not a passion. I only want people that are passionate, because this is hard work. As much as I think some people think consulting is, putting your feet up and answering questions once in a while, it is not that. It's really hard work. And if that's what I ask them, what do you think a consultant does? And I get some of these NAMBY responses. I know that they're not the right one for me. So then I also have a DISC assessment, and I've sometimes done it before the screening call, because something about the resume, I'm thinking, yeah, they're kind of iffy whether I'm going to spend time on a screening call. I've got a license for DISC assessment, so I'd rather do that and not waste my time or the evaluation process in going through it all. And then we have some exercises. We have people sign an NDA. We have exercises that are mostly on the harder side. It shows whether you can read the standard, apply it, and you know enough to appropriately assess it. Now, I set the mark at 85% because, like most smaller consulting firms, we are a 1099 contractor and not a W-2 employee company. And that last 15% takes an incredible amount of money to get people to the 100% where our clients expect them to be, because we coach and mentor them in that 15% to make sure that they get there and they're giving accurate answers and they're leading the client correctly. And I have to pay people to do that. And so 85% was the threshold that I've set for that. And then they have 3 interviews, 2 of the team leads, where they ask them some questions, especially with the tip about client situations. How would you handle this? How did you handle this when you were working with your last employer? And that really helps to know whether they are going to be a team player or they're going to be a diva. Now, I try to cull out divas, because divas are only for themselves. They're only interested in themselves and not in a team. It's all about I. And you'll get to that when you get in the behavioral. So the last one is with me, and it's only if it passes the team leads. They pass their exercises. They've been 2 thumbs up with the team leads, and then I get them, because I'm going to do a final review for whether they fit in with our culture. And I'm going to ask them some very pointed questions. Now, I had a screening call recently with somebody who'd been with a client of ours, but even if they hadn't been, before I have a screening call, I go look at their last employer, the report card, and then their resume, because I want to really know how they did for their last employer and where there were problems. And when they were, I'm going to address it. So I said this to this person who had been to one that was initially denied and then just on provisional. I'm going to ask you some tough questions. And I hope you're going to be really truthful with me. And is this something you want to do? And they said yes. And so I asked them what happened in their last job where they were, there was a denial, and what was their part in it and what was the cause. I wanted to hear whether they were going to do a lot of finger pointing or they were going to take some responsibility. But that's why it's really important to ask tough questions. Don't just assume. And you don't want this to be the elephant in the room. And I think it's important to do that background to see what went on, because you really want to know. And then, of course, the obligatory references and background check. Dave Ramsey, if you're familiar with him, says, you're always going to find people they pick references who are going to give them a good reference. But if they pick somebody who's not going to give a good reference, if they're that stupid, I don't want to hire a stupid person. And so, like, oh, okay. Well, I have had once where somebody did say something pretty negative about somebody, but for the most part, of course, they're all glowing, but you still have to get those if that's part of your process. So going to keep going through. There's some technical skills. Keep going. On a checklist that you're going to get, it is very detailed. It is not experience. It's not as detailed as what we have in our experience grid. Ours takes between 1 hour or more, 1 to 2 hours to complete, because it asks very, very detailed questions. Number one, when we didn't do this, we were finding out things later that, I've never PDF'd a document, and I've never bookmarked anything. I only dealt with X standard and not this standard. Or I didn't do delegation, a delegation area took care of that, so I really don't know anything about delegation. We know that delegation is just part of the standards. Every standard set, you need to know it. So we wanted to know up front, and it also helps us both the team leads and I to ask the right questions of them and delve into those areas that we have some questions about, because, as you know, the devil's in the details. Now, if you're going to have people that you want to write, then you'd better ask for an annotated sample of their writing. And I've done this because this is really important in any organization to have good writers. Next slide. So you're going to see in the checklist about some timelines and how they have, if they've led meetings, if they have interacted with subject matter experts, coordinated when you're going to, this will get more into the behavioral, but coordinating under pressure, clarify whether they owned a process or they just contributed to the process, because that's really critical in whether you can give them that responsibility or not. We found that there are some that have never communicated with NCQA. They've never submitted a question for PCS. They've never dealt with an interactive tool. And so these are things that clients want. And if they haven't done that to work with us, then we need to know that. We can certainly coach to that, but we want to know up front. Next. So there's internal training. You want to know if they've developed trainings or they've just led trainings that others have developed. We know that if you develop something, you're going to know a whole lot more than if you just teach something most of the time. And because you have to really learn it to teach it. And so it's really important to know if they've done that internally. Have they taught team members? Have they onboarded other people on the team? What have they done? And next slide. There's also about file prep and survey preparation participation. So I've gotten a lot of resumes from people that I swear all they knew were the 4 letters together, and they've even misspelled NCQA into NCAQ or NAQC or something. And I swear that maybe, and I say this facetiously, that they were in the building when an NCQA survey occurred, but they say they know NCQA. So you have to really delve deep and know, what did they do? Were they in the room? Did they participate in files reviews and that process? And how much of a participation did they have in the whole process? And so ask some really pointed questions. If you get vague answers about standards or NCQA, that's a huge red flag. I had one that I said, so let's talk about PHM5. And they said, what's that? Like, okay, that's a complex case management. You're a clinician and you don't know what PHM5 is. That's the first red flag. And because then you start going deeper, they don't know anything about it. That means they're probably more of a newbie, because if you've worked with standards for 2 to 3 years, you know the standards names. I don't ask them down at the element or factor level, but I do ask at the standard level. And if they can't tell me that for standards they were supposedly responsible for, that's a big red flag. You know, if they've not had that IRT or PCS experience again, that means that they were probably either at a lower level for PCS and somebody else put it in, or they weren't responsible maybe for the IRT, but you need to know all of that. Some other problems are over-reliance and delegating work to SMEs without following up. We see this all the time. There's a mess. And people say, well, I assumed that I told them what they needed to do, and I assumed they were doing it. We say, inspect what you expect. This is the same thing about delegation. They say, well, I don't know about it because somebody else handles delegation. We have a whole unit. So does that other unit put all of your delegation information in the IRT? No. So who's responsible for it? Well, I was. So did you review the documentation? So those are the types of things you have to really get down to the nitty gritty. And the next slide is about, inability to name standards, as I just talked about, and that they're not proactive. So that's, we've done the values, we've done the technical skills. Now on the next slide, we're going to get to behavioral interviewing skills. That's where you want to ask them about situations. Now, this can be actual situations that you've run into, or this can be things that are theoretical in nature. And if you guys don't have that, then I can certainly tell you what some of those are. And we have those. So Patrick Lencioni wrote The Ideal Team Player. And he has he says they're humble, hungry, and people smart. And this is what we look for in people we hire. And I've got a handout about that, and you'll be able to look at that. Next slide. But you'll see some ideas on what shows that there are any of those. But when you're looking at these and asking these questions, you can use a STAR technique, and this helps you to remember that you're looking at the situation, what tasks were done, and then also what actions they took and what were the results. Tell me about a time you remediated a gap before submission. How do you ensure subject matter experts remain accountable? That shows you whether they're passive or they're active and proactive. Let's go, how do you train new staff? Do they take ownership for it? Do they talk about communications, show initiative instead of waiting for somebody to say, yeah, you need to do this? And then one of the things that I found has been really, really critical is discongruence. And this has been in the last couple of years that I've integrated this after I found out about it. I do this either before or after screening calls, as I mentioned. There's pros and cons for each of those. Sometimes if there's, do they even qualify for a screening call? If they don't have the right place on the disc wheel, then I don't even ask them for a screening call. It's pretty accurate, over 90% accurate. And so it was built in 1928 by, I think, a behavioral psychologist and it's been shown to be so accurate in so many different situations and every type of job that's out there. And it can help you to see if they are the right personality with accreditation, and help separate out, are you hiring them for their personality or their capability and fit within what you need them to do? And there is a handout that you'll be getting on the disc. And I'm just going to do a couple things because we're at the half hour. I thought I'd be able to get through in 30 minutes, but as you can see, not the case. So the disc stands for dominance, influence, steadiness, and conscientiousness. And there are all these combinations, and next slide will show you what they are. And these are the ones that are, the first three are the ones that are the most congruent with what you need to do for accreditation. And the handout will show you about these. It'll also show you the alignment with ideal traits of that accreditation person, whether they're detailed, methodical, logical, somewhat risk averse, their strengths, potential issues, and best fit tasks. And I go back to these all the time if we're looking at something in the team and in a person, and I go back and say, yeah, that is part of what the issue is, but this is how we can work around it. So that's really important. Next slide shows you the best for accreditation. They need to have a high C, which shows an excellent fit. A CS, conscientious and steady, another fit. S and C, steady and conscientious. But S is kind of a moderate fit. And I found this to be true because they're reliable and calm, but they don't have the analytical drive and avoid confrontation or rapid decision making, both of which are really important in accreditation. They're very helpful. They can support people, but they're just, to be a leader, that's not the person you want, or that has the S in there. Next slide. So we're just going to talk about a couple situations I see. Sometimes people are great on paper personality, but their disc profile and the interviews demonstrate a lack of alignment with our values or needs. They could be less experienced. Maybe they shadowed somebody on the accred team, but they didn't have primary and independent work requirements. And so always probe for whether they were an individual contributor or the lead on that. But the rock star you want is the one that has clarity, confidence, and collaboration. Appropriate confidence, not overconfidence, not somebody who says, I. And when you are hearing that a lot on the behavioral interviewing, I did this, I did that, that's a diva. Steer clear, because they're going to want all the credit. They're going to want all the glory. They're not going to be a team player. Next, we have people that, well, just a summary. You need to assure values are in alignment. Don't be afraid of turning people off or away. Values are magnetic and pull the right people. You want people who are going to work well in the value system that you have in your culture, or they're not a cultural fit. Perform detailed probe of their experience, because they'll say something really vague or not very detailed. And if you don't ask a lot of questions, and the right questions, as Richard Branson said, you're not going to get the response that you need to know how deep their experience is. And make sure you conduct behavioral interviewing with several interviewers, because everybody has a little different approach. Ask things a different way and maybe get a different answer, but you certainly want a consistency between the interviewers with the answers that they're getting. Make sure you assess their personality. If they don't have a great personality and enough passion and pep, they might not be the right person for the team. So there's one thing I mentioned, Patrick Lencioni, the ideal team player. He also had the 6 types of working genius. You can go on his website, and for $25, you can take an assessment of your working genius. It's WIDGET, it's wonder, innovation, D is discernment, G is galvanizing, E is enablement, and T is tenacious. I'm a DI. I'm high discerner, high innovator. I need people who are galvanizers to get people to go. And if they are having trouble, I need somebody with an E that's an enabler or a handholder. And T, I need somebody on the team that's a T, that's tenacious and takes the project all the way to the end. And so it's really good if you can take those to know your personality and who you need to fit in with your team. And $25 is really a low bar for finding that out. If you have 100 licenses, I think you can get a 10% discount or something, but $25 is, I think anybody's budget can handle that. And it really will help your team to know how they can all work together and get to the end, because it is a long haul. It's a lot of work, and people can flag in their energy and just get so tired of the whole process. So you need a galvanizer in there that says, hey guys, we're almost there. Let's go. We can get there. Now I can do that, but it's not where I want to live all the time. Typically, these are people on the DISC profile that are an I call them the cheerleaders. So you need different types on there, but of course the I's aren't good for details, and so they're not good in an accreditation team. Watch for red flags along the way and take your time hiring. It's going to take longer, but it's going to take less time in the long haul than hiring the wrong person and cause less disruption in the business. So take your time, do it right. And then the next slide talks about the handouts that we're going to give you. I didn't want to give you those to you ahead of time because you could sit there and read through and not get everything that I'm telling you. And I wanted you to hear that, because a lot of times what's in between the lines is what's really important to give you a little bit more glue to know how they all fit together. So what I was going to tell you is that a lot of times you don't know what you don't know for evaluating and interviewing when you're a lot of times a smaller or newer organization. And in those times we have helped evaluate resumes, and I've co-conducted interviews and done the sole interview for clients who don't know what they're looking for, have no idea what the right answer is, don't have any confidence. And we were asked recently for that assistance again. So we can always do that for you. And a lot of you on this webinar are clients. And if you need any help, just say the word, because we'll be glad to help you. But you have a lot of other things that'll help you. I call this my secret sauce. And I didn't give you all of the ingredients for the secret sauce, but I gave you the high potential ones and then gave you the handouts that can help you to get to where you need to be. If you use all of those and a lot of common sense, you're going to get there. And every once in a while you get a miss. I'm not 100% effective in getting the right people, but I'm a whole lot better than I was 10 years ago. So you either succeed or you learn. And so I've learned, and I try not to make the same mistake twice. And that's what I ask of our consultants, because that means you're not teachable. Just make a different mistake, because you can't live and do work without making some mistakes as you go. Just try to avoid those costly hiring mistakes. If you need a 15-minute consult, I'm always glad to give an opinion. A local health business periodical reached out to me this morning and said, do you have an opinion on this insurer and the hospitals that they are negotiating with? And I said, Dustin, you can always find an opinion with me. I have an opinion about everything. So I'll be glad to give you a 15-minute consult for any of that. And if you're not a client, I'm glad to talk to you too. If you feel that you have needs that maybe we could meet, we'll be glad to talk to you. But That's not the primary focus of this webinar for getting clients. Primary focus is to help you to make the right decisions on who you hire. So somebody asked about, do you find that most companies give references? Companies, no. People, yes. And I have come to where I'm not even asking people to complete a form, because I want to be a little bit more pointed in things that I ask some people about a certain person, as opposed to just a one size fits all. So I'll ask the candidate for names, and then I will set up a time with them. I don't like to call without prior notice. I don't think it's right to disrupt people's days, and I like to have the same courtesy extended to me. So I set up a call, and they're going to be a lot freer in talking to me than they would be if something was sent to HR or sent to them. And so typically they're a lot more open for doing that if I just talk to them personally. That's the only question I saw in the Q&A. Is there anybody else that has a question that I can answer, since you've done some fast power listening to me today? If you want to put it in the chat. I didn't look at the chat. I looked in the Q&A. Okay. Well, if you think of something afterwards, please feel free to reach out to me. This is my address. You can always go on our website at managedhealthcareresources.com, and there's a contact us button there that you can submit anything to us. And one of these freebies will be on the website. Thank you so much, everybody. Thanks for hanging on extra time. And again, thanks for putting that investment in today on making sure that you hire the right person, because it is mission critical. It really is so important. If you don't have the right staff, that's just the foundation for everything. So I appreciate you all here. I appreciate your little emojis on the screen. It's always nice to get that. So thank you so much. Take care. Have a